What's really going on in Lake Vostok? There have been some very strange monster sightings in the ice. From scientific investigations gone wrong to bizarre frozen dragons and a new breed of polar bear, let's take a look. The Homicidal Antarctic Monster. Russian scientists were investigating a subglacial lake in Russia when they captured an organism unlike anything seen before. It was a tentacled monstrosity with unimaginable power. In 1957, the Soviet Union established the Vostok Station. The station was constructed on top of Lake Vostok in Antarctica, although the scientists didn't realize it at the time. That's because the lake is beneath 2 solid miles of ice. In 1974, scientists learned that they were sitting on a scientific treasure. They started drilling into the ice so that they could study the secrets of the lake far beneath their feet. Finally, they breached the lake in February 2012. According to the reports that came out of Russia, their encounter with the organism happened right away. The only account of this insane story comes from Dr. Anton Padalka, who was allegedly part of the scientific expedition. Anton said that on the same day that scientists broke through into the hidden lake, the monster appeared. The creature immediately attacked scientists. It was able to shoot venom through the water at a distance of up to 150 feet. As a result, several of the scientists were killed and eaten. Researchers did manage to get the huge squid-like creature into a tank, but when they brought the tank to the surface, the Russian military showed up and took it away. Unfortunately, nobody has seen it since. This probably never happened. The story has gotten extremely popular lately, but there is no evidence that any of it is real. There are also a few glaring issues with the story. Ice drilling only produces holes in the ice that are a few inches in diameter. Scientists didn't bore a hole through the ice that was big enough for a scientific team to go down and battle a giant octopus. What makes the story so convincing is that some parts are true. Lake Vostok does have a scientific station above it. The lake is hidden underneath over 12,000 feet of ice. Plus, scientists did break through into the subglacial lake in 2012. There does appear to be a mysterious world underneath the frozen lake. And yes, it could be populated by real creatures. It's just that the real creatures might not be particularly exciting for everyone. There are likely fish and tiny organisms, but not krakens that can spit venom through the water. And now for a quick break because it's shoutout time! I want to give a big thank you to Angel V and David Coman for supporting this channel. We wouldn't be here without you! Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos about amazing discoveries. Is the Abominable Snowman real? There's no way I can talk about strange creatures in the ice without at least mentioning the Abominable Snowman a little bit. The Great Snowman, also called the Yeti, is the hairy version of Bigfoot that's said to live in the Himalayan mountains. He, or maybe she, or both, seeing as there must be pairs if they're breeding, are the greatest snowy monsters in the world. People who have witnessed abominable snowmen and snow women have described them as muscular and robust. They are covered in shaggy fur and can grow up to 9 feet tall. But are they real? To understand the truth of the Yeti, let me take you back to the very beginning. The word itself comes from a Tibetan word that's pronounced yete. It means rocky bear in English. Myths of the creature come from the Tibetan people who have lived in the icy mountains of India and Nepal for centuries. Locals here believe in a lot of different things, such as guardian spirits and gods dwelling inside the mountains. But what nobody's sure of is if the mountain people made up the Yeti as another one of their folktales, or if they really saw monstrous bears. The myth of the Abominable Snowman was spread by Western explorers who started visiting the Himalayas in the 19th century. They heard the stories of the Yeti and added their own flair to the tales. And soon enough, the Yeti became a creature much like Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster. Countless people have reported sightings of a Yeti on Mount Everest. Climbers from across the globe and locals have come across enormous footprints in the snow. People have seen a lumbering, hairy figure moving in the distance. And yet, for all of the sightings, not a single real scrap of proof has ever been produced. The Kalup Pilu. There is said to be a creature living along the shores of the Arctic that's too ugly to even imagine. In Inuit mythology, the monster is called Kalup Pilu. It's said to have green, slimy skin, and its fingernails are long and dirty. It has scales and fins, along with webbed hands. It's a semi-aquatic nightmare like a swamp monster. The myth goes back centuries. The ancient Inuit told stories of how the aquatic freak kidnapped children and dragged them to a watery grave. It could supposedly emit a horrible sound that paralyzed any unfortunate victims who heard it. The creature would even wear women's clothing to sneak up on its unsuspecting victims. Although the Kalup Pilu could come on land, it was more likely to hunt along ice floes. It would kidnap children who got too close to the water, then slurp up their life force to remain alive. Most historians think the stories were told to keep kids away from dangerous flowing ice. But who knows? Maybe there really is an icy creature that preys on anyone crazy enough to wander along the Arctic ice floes late at night. The Patagonian Ice Dragon. In the Andean mountains of Patagonia, there is a tiny dragon that lives in the ice. It isn't a ferocious dragon with powerful wings that will engulf you in flame. This dragon is only half an inch long. It's an insect that lives on glaciers. The creature is so tiny that even if you're looking for it, chances are you'll never see it. The Andean mountains of Patagonia aren't the same kind of landscape as the Andean mountains in Peru, where the Inca Empire used to thrive. The environment here is far more inhospitable. The ice fields are cold and brutal, and the creatures that live here have adapted over eons to survive. The Patagonian Ice Dragon is something that scientists refer to as an extremophile. It's an organism that's specially developed to succeed in a place where most other organisms would fail. Although Ice Dragon is a very cool name, that's not what the creature is really called. It's a stonefly, the only insect that lives in this part of Patagonia. It spends its entire life on the ice, but scientists still don't know much about it. One of the only people bothering to study the creature is biologist Isai Madris. He's in a race against time to understand the stonefly before it goes extinct. As the icy mountains begin to melt, the stonefly's home is shrinking. So Madris is trying to learn all he can about the icy bug before it's gone forever. The Brer Bear. There is a new hybrid creature that could be emerging in the frozen wilderness of the far north, and it's called a Brer Bear. Not a polar bear, but a Brer Bear. Before I talk about the Brer Bear, let me tell you a secret about the polar bear. Scientists believe the polar bear evolved from ordinary brown and black bears thanks to a rare mutation. A bear was born that was white as snow, and it wandered into the frozen wastelands of North America. This bear thrived because its whiteness camouflaged it against the snow. It led to more white bears being born, and after many years, suddenly, polar bears were the only thriving bears in the Arctic. This is called evolution, and it can be used to explain the development of every animal on Earth. But what happens when evolution has to backtrack? Scientists believe that because climate change is rapidly melting the frozen parts of the world, animals are starting to go backward. The polar bear might be going back to its roots. In 2010, scientists published a study that listed 34 potential hybrid species emerging in the Arctic. The polar bear, having little use for its whiteness in a warming world, might be reverting back to a brown bear. The species isn't around yet, but scientists think it's only a matter of time. As polar bears wander away from the north and into brown bear territory, the two species could start to mix, and the result would be what scientists have called a Brer Bear. The Brer Bear isn't the only unusual hybrid species that could be seen in the near future. Scientists think the beluga whale could start breeding with the narwhal, creating an entirely new hybrid in the Arctic Ocean. The harp seal could breed with the hooded seal, creating a new kind of seal. Coyotes might also start mating with eastern wolves as they move into one another's territory. And while these hybrid offspring might look strange, it's not entirely a bad thing. Becoming a hybrid species may be the only chance for these animals to live as their cold homes are erased. The ice worm. Iceland is a land of not just natural wonders, but supernatural wonders as well. The ancient island is home to legends of trolls and hidden elves. Just recently, one of Iceland's more unusual legendary monsters was caught on camera. In the cold water of a lake, a local sheep farmer captured a video of a giant ice worm. It's called the Lagar Flotsormur. It happened while the sheep farmer was making his morning coffee. He looked outside and saw what appeared to be a huge serpent slithering through the icy water. His first instinct was to grab his phone and start recording. The footage clearly shows something unusual in the water. It moved in a serpentine motion, its body slithering by and then vanishing. The farmer is fairly certain that he saw a creature that's been skulking in the lake for at least 5 centuries. Nobody knows when the original story of Lagar Flotsormur appeared. There is a map from 1595 that has a picture of the giant ice worm near Iceland's interior lakes, with a notation warning people to stay clear of the monster. Icelandic legends say the ice worm always shows up just before something dreadful happens. Some who saw it during the Middle Ages claimed that the ice worm grew to be a mile long and had a humped back. The creature that was seen by the farmer wasn't a mile long, but it was definitely too big to be a fish. The Alaska Ice Monster. An ice monster was spotted in Alaska in 2016. A video appeared online showing what looks to be a creature covered in chunks of ice maneuvering down the Chena River near Fairbanks. But nobody knows if this thing was a giant sturgeon, a lost shark, or a real river serpent. The clip is only 22 seconds long, showing an object about 15 feet in length floating in the partially frozen river. The footage was taken by a man named Craig McCaw, who works for the Alaska Bureau of Land Management. He was taking photographs from the University Avenue Bridge in Fairbanks when he saw the creature. At first, he thought it was a piece of rope that snagged some chunks of ice. But as he watched the thing move, it became more and more obvious that it was likely a living animal. It's been 7 years and the so-called ice monster hasn't been seen again. Maybe it was a piece of rope that got snagged on the bridge and caught some chunks of ice, wavering in the water like a serpent. Or maybe it was a real sea monster that was encrusted with bits of ice on its way to do whatever it is that sea monsters do. The Japanese Crypted. Out of all the strange icy creatures that could exist in the world, the ningen is likely the weirdest. It's been called a Japanese mermaid. There are supposedly videos of this thing moving in the waters off the coast of Antarctica. People have seen it with their own eyes, and they've made reports about their encounters. But just what is this thing? The ningen isn't your everyday sea creature. It's said to be roughly the size of a whale, anywhere between 40 and 100 feet long. It has pale white flesh and bizarre human-like features. It has arms and a torso like a human, but a tail like a mermaid. It also has a small slit for a mouth and 2 large yearning eyes. It's only ever been seen at night and always in icy waters. Some say they've seen it in Antarctica, while others claim they've seen it in the Arctic. But scientists doubt it's real. The ningen began as an anecdotal story that was shared among Japanese sailors. But as the story has grown in popularity, it's changed and morphed. Now people are saying it could be a biological experiment gone wrong. There's a rumor that the Japanese government is trying to catch the ningen. People have discovered what looks like a huge white monster using Google Earth swimming through the ocean. However, the image is never clear enough to act as proof. The white monsters could be nothing but chunks of ice. And until someone catches the ningen for real, it's going to remain a myth. The Minnesota Iceman. In the 1960s, something unbelievable was displayed at shopping malls and state fairs across North America. It was a frozen creature that was said to be the missing link between modern humans and Neanderthals. But today, it's known as the Minnesota Iceman. The man who exhibited the frozen creature was Frank Hansen. He claimed that the missing link was found encased in a block of ice deep in Siberia. The owner was an eccentric millionaire out of California who didn't want to be named. Frank claimed that he was acting as the caretaker for the frozen creature, showing it to people across the nation in exchange for money. And once, when Frank was bringing the thing into Canada, customs officials stopped him because they thought he was transporting a human cadaver. The FBI was given an anonymous tip that Frank Hansen's missing link wasn't a prehistoric creature at all, but a human murder victim. The creature itself had human-like features, but it was covered in hair. The best way I can describe it is as a frozen Bigfoot. It was roughly 6 feet tall, had a flat nose, and one eye knocked out of its socket. It also wasn't real. Researchers from the Smithsonian Institution conducted their own investigation. What they determined was that Frank was a fraudster. He had a latex model of an ape-human hybrid, which was refrozen between appearances. The missing link was nothing but a carnival exhibit used by Frank to dupe people out of their hard-earned money. In 2013, the Minnesota Iceman was auctioned off on eBay. Surprisingly, it was purchased by Steve Boosty, who owns the Museum of the Weird in Austin, Texas. Thanks for watching. Be sure to stay tuned for extra content you might have missed. New Zealand Mermaid. In 2014, a crew of 7 fishermen from Papua New Guinea were fishing on the east coast of South Island in New Zealand right after a big storm. They landed on the sand and saw something lying there. It looked like human remains. Perhaps they had come across the remains of a crime victim or someone who had died in an accident. They contacted local authorities, and the New Zealand Coast Guard then called in the federal police for help. After some investigation, it looked like the skeletal remains were not human. Still uncertain about what they were dealing with, they asked forensic anthropological experts at the University of Auckland to try to identify it. Was this an aquatic humanoid or mermaid skeleton? Could the discovery be tied to the Maori legend of Pania, a mermaid who was said to live off the coast of New Zealand's North Island? After falling in love with a Maori chief named Karitoki, they were married. Pania lived with him at night, but in the morning, the sea people would call to her and she would spend her days in the sea. Her husband grew tired of this and tried to get her to stay, but if she did, she would die. The only way to get her to stay would be to feed her cooked food. He tried to sneak it to her, but she was warned by an owl, and horrified at the betrayal, she returned to the sea and was never seen again. Some think that she was transformed into the reef at Napier Breakwater and became a legend to locals who believe in the ocean-dwelling creature. Hebrides Mermaid. Scotland is full of mysterious creatures, and there are many stories about mermaids. In the early 1800s, some workers were cutting seaweed on the Outer Hebrides Islands when they spotted a creature in the water that was described as a woman in miniature. They tried to catch the creature, but she got away. A little boy with really good aim threw a rock at her and hit her in the back. She cried out in pain and disappeared beneath the waves. A few days later, a creature with long, shiny, dark hair and the lower body of a fish supposedly washed up on shore. Everyone agreed it was a mermaid. The local sheriff came and had a coffin brought to the beach. The mermaid was buried in the nearby churchyard. The funeral was said to be one of the largest attended on the island, but there is no grave marker, so the location of what is now known as the Hebridean Mermaid is lost. In 1833, Dr. Robert Hamilton, a professor of natural history at Edinburgh University, reported some local fishermen had captured a creature with the face of a monkey, the torso of a woman, and the tail of a dogfish, which they later released. Other mermaid stories have been told around the islands as well. One man reported seeing what he believed to be an otter near the shore. He was about to shoot it, but checked through a telescope first. It looked like it was a woman holding a baby in the water, but she saw him and they disappeared beneath the waves. What do you think these creatures were? Let me know in the comments below. Mamawat. Legend goes that a fisherman from Nigeria had the same routine every day. He would wake up early, have breakfast with his wife, and go fishing. He would almost always catch something within the first hour. But one day, things changed. He was out there a long time, waiting and waiting. Everything was still. The waves, the current, not even a breeze. He sighed and said, "It will be a long day." He threw his line into the water one last time and felt a tug. He pulled and pulled with all his might, thinking, "What a big fish!" but instead of a fish, it was a woman with long black hair and a beautiful face. She was alive and looking at him. He reached for her hand as a sea snake appeared behind her, but as he pulled, he fell into the water instead, and he realized that her bottom half was that of a fish with a red and white tail. This was the Mamawat, the water spirit. Mamawat is a water spirit celebrated in Africa. She wears a green snake that wraps around her body, signifying wisdom, rebirth, creativity, healing, and immortality. She is both good and evil, bringing good fortune or death, gifts or disease. She will sometimes bless you or kidnap you, and you never know until it's too late. It all depends on luck. The fisherman realized it was her, and she grabbed him and carried him back to the boat. He sang her a song as an offering, and soon she was gone, leaving behind a mirror and a brush. The next morning, he awoke to his wife screaming. He jumped up, rushing with a machete. "What's wrong?" She showed him an envelope full of money. This time, the sighting of the Mamawat had been a blessing. And now for number 7. But first, it's shout-out time! Big thank you to Shahina Karyakaran, who loves the videos, and Dave Woods, who gave us 5 stars. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell if you haven't already. The Fiji Mermaid. Mermaid fever might still be going on, but in the 1840s, it reached peak levels. The Fiji Mermaid was one of several so-called mermaids, but they were anything but beautiful. They were half-ape, half-fish creatures. The famous Fiji Mermaid had the head of an orangutan and the tail of a salmon. The mermaid was most likely created by a Japanese fisherman as a joke, although others believe these types of figures were used in some religious practices. A Dutch merchant purchased this mermaid in 1810, as the Dutch were the only people allowed to trade with Japan. When trade routes opened up, many more fake mermaids started to appear in Europe. The Dutch ship sank, but everyone, including the mermaid, was rescued by an American captain who was so fascinated by the mermaid that he sold his ship and bought it from the Dutch merchant for $6,000. To make his money back, he started charging people to see it and made enough money to make his way to London. He seems to have believed that the mermaid was actually real, and many publications backed him up. Over time, it made its way to the hands of P.T. Barnum, who had just purchased a museum and came up with a story to promote the mermaid around the world. P.T. Barnum was an American showman famous for promoting the sensational and the bizarre. You have to remember that during this time, the 1800s, many new species of animals were being discovered, so an ugly mermaid might not have seemed so far-fetched. P.T. Barnum went on to found Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. Warsaw, Poland. If you have ever been to Warsaw, Poland, you might have noticed that in a few places in Old Town or close to the river, there are sculptures of a beautiful mermaid, and her image has become the symbol of the Polish capital. But how did she come to be here? Sirena, or Sirenka as she is called, has been important to the city for a very long time. She was already on a royal seal dating back to 1390. Legend goes that 2 mermaid sisters were swimming in the Baltic Sea. After falling in love with the landscape, one of the mermaid sisters swam down the Vistula River and decided to stay there. After a few days, some fishermen started noticing strange activity in the water. Something was tampering with their nets, so they teamed up to find what it was. They came upon the mermaid singing and were all enchanted with her beauty, all except for one, a greedy merchant who wanted to capture her and show her off for profit. He kidnapped her and locked her in a shed where she spent her days crying and wailing a haunting song. One of the young fishermen heard her and made it his mission to release her. He got together some townspeople and hatched a plan. In gratitude, the mermaid promised to keep the city and its people safe whenever they needed it. As a way to protect Warsaw, she started wearing a sword and shield, becoming an important symbol and was memorialized and celebrated. Another story goes that Prince Kazimierz was hunting one night in the marshlands and got lost. A mermaid emerged from the water and guided him to safety by firing burning arrows into the sky. Out of gratitude, he made the mermaid the emblem of the city. Regardless of the story, Warsaw is lucky to count with the support of mermaids. The Mermaid of Kiryat Yam. In the area of Kiryat Yam, a city in northern Israel, a number of mermaid sightings in 2009 spurred on a search for the mythical creature. After multiple accounts surfaced of people supposedly sighting mermaids off the coast, the local town council offered a $1 million reward to anyone who could bring proof the creature existed. Seen only in the evening at sunset, the sea nymph continued to attract crowds of people with cameras hoping to catch a glimpse of the half-girl, half-fish. Some had reported that the mermaid looked like a young woman and would jump in the water and do tricks like a dolphin for onlookers. While the reward money might seem like a publicity stunt, town council members denied this, saying that they were motivated by the chance to nurture the mermaid as a way to bring more tourists to the area. If someone really did get a picture of a mermaid, tourism alone would make the town way more than $1 million. One resident described seeing the creature when he and some friends were hanging out on the beach and saw a woman lying in the sand. Noting the strange way she was sitting, they approached her, only to have her jump into the water, showing off her supposed tail. Stories of mermaids are common for areas surrounded by water and from seafaring people who claim to see this strange hybrid of human and fish. What is it that people are seeing? What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. La Sirène. Known in the Caribbean islands, La Sirène is a mermaid who has a sister called La Baleine, who is a whale. She is the Haitian goddess of the sea and reigns over the ocean. Her sister, the whale, symbolizes the boundary between our world and the underwater world. Usually shown holding a mirror or pearls, La Sirène is a blending of African and European mermaid tales with Caribbean culture. In Haiti, she is part of the voodoo religion, with many of her followers calling to her during voodoo ceremonies. Some even believe her spirit can enter the body of female followers and bring them luck, wealth, good health, and love. She brings love and success, but can also be violent and is associated with death. She will also steal children and take them to her underwater palace. Followers of La Sirène say she takes them to her world underwater from anywhere between 3 days and 3 years, where she instills new powers in them, returning them to land as a voodoo priestess. The Big Island Mermaid. Hawaii has several legends about mermaids, and I mean, if you were a mermaid, wouldn't you want to live in Hawaii? Mermaid sightings have been reported off the Big Island for over 50 years. A group of divers went out to explore the ocean floor and got the surprise of a lifetime. They claim to have photographic evidence of the mermaid. The boat's dive master Jeff Liker took his tour group out to the Kona coast when a school of dolphins started following the boat. When one of the men on the boat started yelling, Liker turned and spotted what he believed to be a nude woman in the water with long flowing hair and a beautiful face. After she leapt into the air, he saw that her lower half was covered in scales and tapered into a huge fishtail. The others on the boat also saw the creature before it dove underwater. But that initial sighting wasn't the only one they had that day. Later, when they got to their destination, Liker was photographing fish underwater when something swam past him. He turned and aimed his camera at the creature, capturing a distinctive mermaid figure swimming above him. To have such a clear photo is quite the feat for an elusive creature such as a mermaid. So, do you believe the photo is real? Or maybe a swimmer with a really good costume? Whether the Kauai Point mermaid is real or not, locals and visitors to Hawaii's Big Island still believe in the half-woman, half-fish. British Columbia Mermaid. In the summer of 1967, a mermaid was reportedly spotted on Main Island on Canada's west coast. In an early evening in June, the creature was seen by ferry passengers in the Active Pass Strait that separates the island in the north from the southern Gulf Islands. A number of witnesses said the mermaid had a large fish in her hand that she supposedly took a bite from. They also said that she seemed to enjoy the surf washing over her. A number of onlookers took photos, with the local newspaper offering a $25,000 reward for whomever could provide photographic evidence. Unfortunately, this story has been debunked by the mermaid herself. After a local columnist was told the name of someone who might be able to shed some light on the incident, he ended up finding the so-called mermaid, Judy Allred. One of her acquaintances came up with the idea that a mermaid sighting could promote a fishing derby. Allred agreed to wear a costume and sit on Main Island, where she was supposed to wait for 2 ferries to pass. While waiting, Allred was almost pulled under by the backwash from the ferries. Luckily, she managed to stay there long enough for tourists to snap some photos, and thus the legend of the Main Island Mermaid was born, continuing on to this day. Columbus's mermaids. One of the earliest reports of mermaid sightings comes from Italian explorer Christopher Columbus, who described seeing the creatures while sailing near the Dominican Republic. He said they were not half as beautiful as they are painted. 6 months before his sighting, Columbus set sail from Spain across the Atlantic Ocean in search of a western route to Asia. Instead of finding that route, he found America, and while sailing off the coast, he spotted what he believed to be the mythical mermaid. Describing them as having a human appearance in their faces, he said they were able to elevate themselves above the surface of the sea. Did he see manatees and not mermaids? It seems strange that Columbus would mistake these slow-moving sea cows for a mermaid. Could being at sea for so long have made him see things? Manatees can range from 8 to 13 feet in length and can weigh between 400 to 1,300 pounds. Maybe the loneliness of the sea voyage led Columbus to believe he had seen a sea maiden. Could Columbus have mistaken the large sea animals for the half-female, half-fish goddess known as a Targatis by the ancient Babylonians? Or could he have borrowed from the ancient Greeks, whose goddess Aphrodite is believed to have been inspiration for the myths of mermaids as sirens who lured men to a watery grave? No one can know for sure, but it is obvious that long stretches at sea can not only cause hallucinations, but also tall tales, even from infamous world explorers. Thanks for watching! Be sure to stay tuned for extra content you might have missed. The Goatman. The Goatman is an enormous humanoid cryptid, half man, half goat, measuring around 7 feet tall. There have been reports of sightings in Alabama, Louisiana, Maryland, Texas, and several other places. In Maryland, legend goes that he was once a man who kept goats who was lonely and angry and went crazy when local teens killed his beloved goats. Some legends depict the Goatman as a mythical beast or a cryptid and might be related to the chupacabra. Another version of the Goatman legend asserts that he is the result of the experiments of a mad scientist working at the Beltsville Agricultural Research Center, a USDA facility. Someone mixed the DNA of a goat and a human, creating this monstrosity. In any case, you never want to run into him. He hides in the woods, terrorizing teenagers and lovers, beheading dogs and wreaking havoc in general while squealing and making goat noises. Whatever happened to him in the past, he is hungry and out for blood. If you get too close to his lair, he will come out to get you, and it won't be pretty. Apparently, these stories have been around for a long time, but the Goatman really became famous in the 60s when 16 hikers disappeared, never to be seen again. In the 70s, the Prince George's County News published an article that described several ghosts and monsters that allegedly haunted the area around Fletchertown Road in Bowie, including the Goatman. Just 2 weeks later, a family's dog went missing, and then only the head was found near Fletchertown Road. Perhaps it had been hit by a train, but locals started saying it was the Goatman. The night the canine disappeared, locals claimed to have seen a large, animal-like creature that walks on its hind legs. It is said to be related to the Pope Lick monster from Kentucky, another half-goat, half-man creature that also chases down unsuspecting victims with an axe. He started out as a crazy person who escaped from the mental hospital and then went to live with goats. If you ever see a wild goat, get out of there as quickly as possible. Emela Inuka. Hailing from West Central Africa, including the Congo's Likoala swamp region and possibly parts of Cameroon, the Emela Inuka is a massive, ferocious cryptid that reportedly kills anything it crosses paths with. Known to locals as the elephant killer, the hairless, single-horned creature is roughly the same size as an African elephant, around 13,230 pounds, and resembles a rhinoceros in shape and appearance. For some reason, it is known for killing elephants by stabbing and disemboweling them with its horn. Lucien Blanco, chief game inspector in French Equatorial Africa in the 1950s, wrote of a ferocious creature in the Congo, larger than a buffalo, that was considered the most dangerous animal by the local Kele Pygmies. The semi-aquatic Emela Inuka is equipped with stump-like legs, a bulky body, and a crocodile-like tail. It's known for emitting startling noises like snorts and growls. Despite being herbivorous, the creature is known for being highly aggressive and territorial, striking fear into the people of the area. When Dr. Roy Mackal traveled to the Congo in 1981 in search of another cryptid, a sauropod dinosaur called the Mokele Mbebe, locals expressed far more interest in the elephant-goring Emela Inuka, or the killer of elephants. He started looking for that too. Unlike a rhino, it has a long tail and a really thick horn, so going along with the description, Dr. Mackal theorized that it could be a type of horned dinosaur called a Centrosaurus, but the question of exactly what the creature is remains unanswered to this day. The 1933 book, 18 Years on Lake Bangeweulu by author J.E. Hughes claims that Wa-Ushi tribesmen killed an animal resembling the Emela Inuka along the banks of the Luapula River, but the creature was not mentioned by name until 1954, when it appeared in an article in the journal Mammalia. While a detailed record of sightings is lacking, the Emela Inuka was reportedly last spotted in Kenya. Many claim to have seen the creature itself, or evidence of it, but its existence remains unproven. The Moth Man. The Moth Man of Point Pleasant, maybe one of America's creepiest legendary cryptids, originated in Clendenin, West Virginia on November 12, 1966, when a cemetery worker spotted a massive creature passing overhead, swiftly passing from one tree to the next. Following that first reported sighting, the elusive Moth Man reappeared 3 days later in Point Pleasant in the form of a 6 to 7 foot tall gray-winged entity that two couples observed standing in front of their car, seemingly trying to evade the vehicle's bright lights. In an interview with the Point Pleasant Register, eyewitnesses Roger Scarberry and Steve Mallet described the creature as having bright red eyes, set roughly 6 inches apart, and a wingspan measuring around 10 feet. Although a clumsy runner, the being skillfully flew at up to 100 miles per hour. More witnesses came forward claiming to have seen the Moth Man, including Salem, West Virginia resident Newell Partridge. While investigating strange noises from outside, the homeowner encountered 2 bright red eyes that resembled bicycle reflectors. Not everyone immediately believed that the Moth Man was real, including Dr. Robert L. Smith of West Virginia University, who suggested that the apparition was instead a sandhill crane, a bird that can grow as tall as an average man, and whose eyes are surrounded by red coloring. Other skeptics posit that a rather clever prankster started the Moth Man legend. People also blame the national press, which sparked mass hysteria in the region, stirring people into a panic that perhaps made them think that they were seeing the Moth Man when they were instead witnessing known, everyday large owl species. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Jorogumo. The Jorogumo is a type of yokai, or supernatural monster or spirit from Japanese folklore. The name itself literally means binding woman, which is fitting given that it is often depicted as a spider that takes on the appearance of a beautiful seductress. It uses its looks to entice and ultimately devour young men. According to legends, when a spider lives to be 400 years old, it gains magical powers that allow it to grow and shapeshift, helping it to hunt for humans. They are said to spin silk strong enough to easily trap fully grown men. They also have a potent venom that can weaken their victims gradually so they can relish in their sufferings. They also have the power to control smaller spiders, using them to do their bidding. They can disguise their webs as homes and will play music to seduce men. The music serves to distract the unsuspecting victims while they spin their spider silk around them in order to devour them later. In Izu City, Shizuoka, Japan, it is believed that there is a legendary spider mistress living in Joran Falls that uses its web to pull unsuspecting victims into the water to drown them. Mapinguari. In its original form, the Mapinguari was an Amazonian shaman who discovered the secret to immortality. Displeased with his discovery, the gods turned him into a hairy beast that reportedly wanders the border between Brazil and Bolivia to this day. Sometimes described as a humanoid creature with a mouth situated in the center of its stomach and rumored to stand at over 7 feet tall on its hind legs, it has one eye, long claws, and caiman skin. But the worst and most famous thing about it is its putrid smell that is so unbearable it will knock you right out. The Mapinguari has been seen walking uneasily on 2 legs and more confidently on all 4s. It's fast and agile, according to some eyewitness reports, while others describe it as slow-moving, and the creature is most active during twilight and at night. Older sightings describe the cryptid as ape-like, while more contemporary accounts mention a giant sloth-like creature. One prevailing theory is that the Mapinguari is a giant ground sloth that has survived past the Ice Age. Meanwhile, some experts have theorized that the Mapinguari was a spectacled bear, making its seasonal appearance in the region, but wild bears have never been recorded in Brazil, making this possibility unlikely. Scientists have yet to prove that the Mapinguari exists, but the sightings continue into modern times. Jersey Devil. Legend holds that the Jersey Devil was the unwanted 13th son of Mother Leeds, one of the earliest settlers of southern New Jersey's Pine Barrens. Unable to afford to raise the baby, Leeds and her husband offered the rejected child to the devil before his birth in 1735. The delivery was routine, and at first the baby boy seemed healthy. Within minutes, however, the infant began transforming into a hideous, never-before-seen creature, growing rapidly and sprouting horns from his head and talons from his fingers. As the demonic baby wailed, he grew wings and hair appeared all over his body. His eyes turned bright red, and he attacked and killed his mother and her midwives, marking the beginning of the Jersey Devil's alleged reign of terror. The monster continued along his path of destruction, killing his father and anyone else in sight that he could get to. Today, he supposedly continues to terrorize anyone he possibly can. Eyewitness accounts of the Jersey Devil in the Pine Barrens region were common during the 18th and 19th centuries, with other reports detailing eerie wailing and slaughtered livestock and pets.
Starting in 1909, the creature's range began expanding into other towns and cities, eventually reaching as far as Philadelphia and Camden. At the peak of the panic, children stopped attending school, and bloodhounds refused to follow the Jersey Devil's trail, according to Weird New Jersey. Witnesses described the monster as resembling a flying kangaroo or an ostrich-like creature, often with a dog's head, a horse's face, deer-like antlers, a forked reptilian tail, and leathery wings. Although modern sightings occur on a far lesser scale than in the past, many people remain die-hard believers in the Jersey Devil. Mongolian Deathworm. With a name meaning large intestine worm, the Ogo Pogo is a dark red, 4-foot-long cryptid resembling a giant earthworm and originating from Mongolia. Also known as the Mongolian Deathworm, it reportedly lives below ground in the southern Gobi Desert, only surfacing during summer and when the ground is wet. Early sightings claim that the Ogo Pogo can spit venom or even acid from its mouth, and that the slime coating its body is deadly to the touch, more or less instantly. The creature is even rumored to be able to electrocute its victims from afar. But the Mongolian Deathworm is rarely spotted and is photographed even less. Many have ventured out in search of the creepy cryptid, but nobody has produced solid evidence of its existence. Some die-hard believers are undeterred by this lack of physical proof, believing that the stories they hear are nonetheless based in historical truth and that the descriptions of the creature are consistent enough to lend some credibility to eyewitness claims. Scientists, on the other hand, are doubtful that the Mongolian Deathworm truly exists, especially since nobody has ever found evidence of any live or dead specimens. At the same time, they've also failed to disprove that the creepy crawly cryptid is out there. Iliamna Lake Monster. Commonly known as Ili, the Iliamna Lake Monster resides in a small fishing village next to Alaska's largest lake and is a staple of local mythology. Measuring somewhere between 10 and 30 feet long, the aquatic cryptid resembles a long marine creature, unlike a whale or a seal, with a long tail, distinct fins, and a square-shaped head, which it reportedly uses for inflicting blunt force into small boats and other structures. Native legends describe it as a large beast that roams the waters. The Tlingit people told the first tales of a monster living in the lake, which they called the Gonakadet. Meanwhile, the Aleut people called the purported fish monster the Jig-Ik-Nak. According to local legend, these creatures prefer to travel in groups, and rumor has it that they attacked warriors and canoes in the past. The Iliamna Lake Monster has been sighted plenty of times since then, including from overhead flights. In 1979, the Anchorage Daily News offered $100,000 to anyone who could produce solid evidence of the creature's existence, at which time sightings of the cryptid ironically slowed down. It was also featured on the Animal Planet show River Monsters. But the Iliamna Lake Monster remains a mere legend as far as science is concerned, and there may even be a perfectly logical explanation for the strange animals people claim to see. According to biologist Jeremy Wade, people may be mistaking the white sturgeon, the largest fish in North America, as the Iliamna Lake Monster. But there are fishermen that would know the difference who have said that the monster is not the same. Indigenous to Alaska and the Pacific Northwest, the species can reach up to 1,500 pounds and 20 feet in length. The white sturgeon is a bottom-dwelling fish, which would explain why it's rarely seen, and its coloring seems to match the aluminum shade described by past eyewitnesses. But nobody knows for sure if the white sturgeon is the Iliamna Lake Monster, so for now, the case remains open. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Monkey Man of Delhi. In May 2001, claims circulated of a half-man, half-monkey creature appearing on the streets of New Delhi, India. Known as the Kala Bandar, which is Hindi for black monkey, the cryptid reportedly came out primarily at night and attacked dozens of people by clawing and biting at them. While eyewitness accounts are inconsistent, the Kala Bandar was generally described as being around 4 feet tall with metal claws, glowing red eyes, and a metal helmet. It was covered in black hair and had 3 buttons down its chest. Another version of the cryptid claims that the Monkey Man is around 8 feet tall, of muscular stature, and capable of leaping from one building to the next. People were so convinced that the Kala Bandar existed, police issued a sketch of the suspect in question. While the case of the Monkey Man of New Delhi is generally chalked up to mass hysteria, some people bore disturbing wounds that appear to be legitimately inflicted by an animal of some sort. We just don't quite know what it was. Ogo Pogo. Nicknamed Augie, the Ogo Pogo or Okanagan Lake Monster is a lake monster of Canadian folklore, said to inhabit Okanagan Lake in British Columbia. Its legend dates as far back as the 1700s, with origins tied to First Nation tribes who spoke of a water beast in the lake. The creature is often depicted as a multi-humped serpentine sea dragon with green or black skin and the head of a horse, snake, or a sheep. The first known instance of a white settler spotting the beast occurred in 1872, when a woman named Susan Allison, the first non-native person to live in the region, reportedly saw the Ogo Pogo. Sightings continue into modern times, with at least 3 reported instances happening in 2018. Last year, a local man named Jim LaRock claimed to have captured footage of the Ogo Pogo, which appeared in the clip to look like a giant serpentine creature at least 120 feet long, while his son was paddleboarding on Lake Okanagan. He first noticed what he believed was the Ogo Pogo after hearing a loud, repetitive swooshing sound, and he thankfully had his camera on him at the time. LaRock, a longtime resident who owns a local liquor store, said that the creature appeared to have at least 7 fins, and that if you watch the video footage closely enough, you can see the creature lifting and slapping its fins into the water. Environmental scientist Dr. Robert Young was less wowed than many by the clip, which he believes may show a natural phenomenon called overturn, which happens seasonally where lake layers of different temperatures and depths will pass each other. What do you think? Is the Ogo Pogo the real deal, or are people imagining what they see? Let me know in the comments below.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to stay tuned for extra content you might have missed.
The Yuka Man. For over 4 decades, a series of sightings in the Mojave Desert of southeastern California and southern Nevada of a bizarre humanoid creature called the Yuka Man have remained unexplained. The first known sighting of the Yuka Man, also called the Sierra Highway Devil, occurred in 1971. A Marine stationed at the 29 Palms military base heard strange, animal-like grunting coming from nearby desert bushes, as well as growling that seemed to circle his guard station. He investigated the sources of the noises and encountered an 8-foot-tall, ape-like creature with glowing red eyes. The red-eyed beast was spotted often enough by military personnel for them to receive orders not to fire at it. Their observations, as well as surveillance footage, were considered classified. In following years, people complained about their dogs behaving strangely in the area, as well as an awful stench. Throughout the early 70s, campers at Joshua Tree National Park, which straddles the Colorado and Mojave deserts, spoke of a monstrous, human-like beast of up to 12 feet tall, rummaging through their campsites and lurking around the desert. Some blurry photographs turned up of the alleged creature, and people also reported finding gigantic footprints. In 1979, an elderly couple claimed that the beast stepped out in front of their car and wandered off, leaving its footprints behind. The sightings continued for several more years, with some footprints measuring 1.5 feet long. However, proof that the Yuka Man truly exists remains scarce. Blue eyes. Besides the Yuka Man, over the years there have been many other sightings of a Bigfoot-like creature throughout the Mojave Desert. One of the more distinct observations was made during the 70s by a policeman at Edwards Air Force Base. The man, who was an experienced hunter, noticed a set of large, bright blue eyes that looked unlike any creature he'd ever seen before. They were set about 4 inches apart, indicating that the animal had a massive head. It was too dark for the patrolman to see its body, but the eyes were located high enough for him to know that the beast was at least 7 feet tall. You might be thinking that the man was perhaps overtired or maybe even drunk, but for quite some time, overnight workers regularly spotted blue eyes near the base. In fact, word has it that the strange creature remains a widely discussed topic right up to this day. Are blue eyes and the Yuka Man perhaps related? Let me know what you think in the comments below. The cement monster. The cement monster is a seemingly primitive hominid frequently spotted in the Johnson Valley of the Mojave Desert. It gets its name from its appearances at a nearby concrete plant owned by the Mitsubishi Cement Corporation. The creature was first spotted in 1988 by 2 U.S. Marines who were on their way home from a skiing trip. Ken Cross, one of the witnesses, reported to researcher Douglas E. Trapp that the animal's hairy bottom half looked human and that its top half was simply monsterish and scary. It was dark, and the car's headlights only captured the animal's bottom half, which perhaps explains why the men couldn't see the top very well. Cross explained that the 8-foot-tall cement monster ran out into the road about 150 feet ahead of the car and crossed the highway in 3 giant strides. As it ran, its arms pumped back and forth, just like any of us would do if sprinting across the road in front of a car, Cross recounted. Other reports from the area include seeing gigantic footprints and evidence of an animal rummaging through people's garbage. The BGO Sandman. The BGO Sandman, also called the BGO Sasquatch, is just another of seemingly countless desert yetis that have been spotted throughout the American Southwest. This one dwells primarily in San Diego County of Southern California, in an area called the BGO Badlands, or the BGO Sink. Unlike most of the creatures so far, the BGO Sandman is spotted in the Colorado Desert, not the Mojave, and is typically seen in the Anza Borrego Desert State Park. Stories of the humanoid-like creature have circulated for centuries. When Spanish missionaries first came to San Diego County in 1769, the region's native inhabitants spoke of hairy devils, man-like beasts that lived along the Santa Ana River. They were foul-smelling and avoided at all costs. European settlers soon encountered the creatures firsthand while passing through via stagecoach. Some of these alleged sightings were accompanied by strange, unexplained deaths, where the victims appeared to have been attacked by a savage animal of some kind, like the big bad wolf. According to some tales, the BGO Sasquatch is known to be a particularly aggressive Bigfoot species. At the very least, it's not shy. In one 1939 sighting, a man camping alone was awakened by two of the beasts, who he later described as having silverish fur and demonic red eyes. They seemed afraid of his campfire, but menaced around the man's camp for some time before finally lurking off into the darkness. 30 years later, another camper named Harold Lancaster encountered a similar creature. He fired his pistol, and luckily it scared the Sasquatch off after causing it to jump 3 feet into the air. The European Sasquatch. Believe it or not, Bigfoot sightings aren't limited to deserts in the United States or even North America. In 2016, the UK Express published a video clip of a man-like beast wandering through a Portuguese desert. The footage shows the animal slowly walking upright with long arms, long legs, and a stooped back. Even more oddly, once the creature disappears behind some brush, it never re-emerges into view. Some viewers saw the video as proof of the existence of the long-fabled chupacabra. The chupacabra is a mythical creature that originated in Latin America as an explanation for farmers discovering their goats dead and drained of blood. Meanwhile, others believe the creature bore more of a resemblance to Bigfoot, while others concluded that it must have been alien in origin. Of course, some people automatically wrote the footage off as fake, including one commenter who stated, "Funny how you can never get a clear picture of these so-called alien sightings. If we did, they wouldn't be so mysterious, would they?" The Mongolian Deathworm. According to legend, the Mongolian Deathworm is a large creature with acidic saliva that lives in the southern Gobi Desert. The fat, dark red worm is rumored to be up to 3 feet long and is spiked on both ends. Locals call it the Olgoi Korkoi, which loosely translates to large intestine worm. The Mongolian deathworm spends most of its time underground. However, it is occasionally spotted lying on the desert surface, and it kills its victims in various ways. The most famous method is by spitting its corrosive venom at the target. If that fails, the Mongolian deathworm resorts to Plan B, electrocuting its prey from a distance. Not surprisingly, the creature has never been photographed and has only been seen on a handful of occasions. It was also mentioned in a 1926 publication by paleontologist Roy Chapman Andrews, who didn't believe the deathworm existed, but was still courteous enough to pass on the tales that circulated about it in Mongolia. There have been several organized and amateur attempts to confirm the creature's existence by going out and finding it. However, all such attempts have failed. Of course, like any legendary creature, the Mongolian deathworm has its following of die-hard believers who insist that with all the stories that go around about it, there must be some basis in historical truth. Some theories hold that the worm is actually a snake or a legless lizard, which would be a much more appropriate animal for the arid, inhospitable desert climate it's been spotted in. Do you think it's possible for a creature like the Mongolian deathworm to exist, despite a lack of scientific evidence? Let me know in the comments. A strange creature on Mars. Although this may be the only planet where you'll find deserts as humans know them, as in dry, hot, oxygen-rich environments full of sand, lizards, and cacti, there are deserts on other planets. However, none of these extraterrestrial deserts are known to be hospitable to any life forms. Recently, UFO expert Scott Waring of UFO Sightings Daily claimed to spot an alien in footage of Mars captured by NASA. While browsing raw images of Mars' surface taken by NASA's Curiosity rover, Waring noticed what looked like, at least to him, an alien standing next to a rock formation. He claims that by zooming in on the picture, the creature's tail, legs, and eyes become identifiable. Waring compared the being to an Earth-like rodent or lizard and believes it may be wandering the desert of Mars in search of liquid water. He readily admits that such a sighting would be very rare, but believes it's possible. The man isn't alone in his belief. The YouTube channel UFO Hunting Clouds considers the image proof that life exists on Mars and theorizes that the animal was using its natural camouflaging abilities to blend in with its surroundings when the photograph was taken. In the past, Waring has claimed to spot other alien creatures in images of Mars, including an animal that, in his opinion, resembled a squirrel, as well as an iguana-like creature. The Speedway Monster. Throughout the 1950s and 60s, there were a series of reported sightings of a Bigfoot-like creature at the Mickey Thompson's Fontana International Dragway in Fontana, California. Like many other Sasquatch-type creatures spotted in the American Southwest, the animal was large, hairy, and walked on 2 feet. Some reports claim that the Speedway Monster, as it came to be called, ran out in front of entire crowds, grunting and making other bestial noises. In 1965, a terrified young boy claimed that the monster jumped out of the brush and attacked him while he walked home. Luckily, he escaped mostly unscathed, with only his clothes being torn. That same year, a woman named Jerry Mendenhall reported being accosted through the window of her parked car along a Fontana road by a filthy, mud-covered creature that, in her words, smelled like a dead animal. Thanks to her quick thinking, Mendenhall put the pedal to the metal just in time to escape the horrific beast. Hundreds of visitors at the Speedway saw the monster, but the sightings continued even after the racetrack closed in 1975. Reports persisted into the 1990s, with Boy Scout troops, campers, motorists, and others supposedly having encountered the Speedway monster. Perhaps the strangest aspect of this legend is why the creature was drawn to a noisy speedway or the Fontana area in general. Thanks for watching! Have you ever heard of any of these monsters? Which one did you like the most? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already and give this video a thumbs up to let me know if you would like to see more videos like these. See you later! Bye!